Thanksgiving at my parents' house had always followed a predictable script. The same polished dining table, the same measured conversations hovering safely above anything real. Gratitude, in our family, was mostly aesthetic, something arranged like the centerpiece rather than genuinely expressed. I arrived with that familiar sense of managed belonging. Not quite welcome, not quite excluded, just positioned. My sister was already seated, phone resting casually beside her plate. She had developed a habit of documenting gatherings, though never in ways that felt innocent. In our family, cameras were rarely neutral objects. My mother smiled when I sat down. Too bright, too deliberate. "How have you been?" she asked. It was a ritual question. The answer did not matter. "Fine." My father nodded, carving turkey with unnecessary precision. His silence carried more authority than most people's words. Dinner unfolded in fragments of small talk. Weather, work, stories recycled from previous years. Beneath it all, I sensed the same quiet tension that had defined the last few holidays, something unresolved, patiently waiting for its moment. It arrived with dessert. My mother slid an envelope across the table. Not ceremoniously, not apologetically. Just across. For a second I assumed it was a card. Birthdays, promotions, minor milestones, envelopes had always signaled acceptable affection. But the weight felt wrong. Inside was a check, $10,000, and beneath it, a printed itinerary. One-way ticket. Departure date already selected. My thoughts did not explode, they slowed. Across the table, my sister's phone tilted slightly upward. Recording. Of course. No one spoke immediately. The silence felt structured, rehearsed in ways I hadn't recognized until now. Finally, my father cleared his throat. "We thought this would be best." Best. Such an efficient word. "For who?" I asked. "For everyone." My mother's voice trembled just enough to imply emotional difficulty without fully committing to it. "You've always struggled here." Struggled. Another convenient framing. As if discomfort were pathology. As if distance were dysfunction. I looked at the check again. $10,000. A strangely precise valuation of disappearance. My sister leaned forward slightly, anticipation barely concealed. This was the scene they had prepared for. Shock, anger, humiliation, some visible unraveling that could later be replayed, analyzed, justified. Instead, something unexpected happened. I smiled, not defiantly, not bitterly. Just a small, tired smirk that surprised even me. My sister's eyebrows lifted. My mother blinked. My father's knife paused mid-motion. Without speaking, I folded the check and slid it back into the envelope. Then I picked it up. The ticket followed. "I appreciate it," I said calmly. The room shifted, not relief. Confusion. That wasn't the reaction they had planned to capture. "You what?" my sister asked. I said I appreciate it. "You're just accepting this." I shrugged lightly. "What would you prefer?" The question landed awkwardly, draining momentum from the moment. My father recovered first. "This isn't a joke." "I know." My mother's voice softened. "We want you to have a fresh start." Fresh start. A compassionate disguise for erasure. "I'm sure you do." And that was it. No argument. No dramatic speech about family loyalty or betrayal. Just quiet compliance. Which unsettled them far more than resistance ever could. Dinner ended with brittle politeness. My sister's camera stopped recording. But the discomfort remained. Driving home, the envelope sat on the passenger seat. $10,000. One-way exit. On paper, it looked like generosity. In reality, it felt like an administrative decision. A restructuring of inconvenience. What they didn't know, what I had chosen not to tell them, was that earlier that morning, before arriving, I had finalized paperwork they had long assumed unnecessary. Nothing illegal. Nothing dramatic, just corrections, clarifications, legal adjustments tied to shared financial arrangements, property access, and obligations my parents had quietly woven into my life over the years, details I had once ignored out of trust, then reviewed out of necessity. By the next afternoon, my phone began vibrating. Not my sister this time, my father. Then my mother. Then both, repeatedly. Voicemail stacking with unfamiliar urgency. Call us, we need to talk. There's been a misunderstanding. Misunderstanding. The word people use when consequences feel unfair. At first I didn't answer, not out of spite, out of curiosity. It is a strange experience, hearing anxiety in voices that had always spoken from certainty. Eventually, I picked up. What's wrong? You know exactly what's wrong. My father's composure had thinned noticeably. There are complications. With what? With everything. That word again. Everything. The adjustments I'd made had not destroyed anything. They had simply removed assumptions. Assumptions that my presence, my compliance, my role within the family structure were permanent fixtures. Assumptions that rejection could occur without recalibration. I followed the agreements. I said evenly. This is vindictive. No. A pause. This is accurate. Silence pressed heavily through the line. Power had not reversed explosively. It had shifted quietly, mechanically through systems that do not recognize emotional narratives. By evening, my parents were no longer discussing fresh starts or best outcomes. They were negotiating, explaining, reframing, and beneath it all, something rawer had surfaced. Not regret. Discomfort. The discomfort of realizing that dismissal is rarely one-sided. That disappearance, once formalized, has logistical consequences. I sat by the window, city lights flickering in detached indifference. No triumph warmed the room, no satisfaction. Only a low, unsettled tension. Because leverage, I was learning, does not always feel like power. Sometimes, it feels like distance finally becoming real.